All right, we're factoring each expression just like before. These are only slightly different. Let me show you how they're slightly different. Now when we have A and C, we get 5 times negative 4, we get negative 20. And that's what we're going to have to find the factors of. So essentially what's going on is if you look at this constant term here at the end, this negative 4, that means what we had to multiply together, the constant term from each binomial that we'll find, what we had to multiply together would give us a negative. That means we had a positive number and a negative number. Okay, so what do we need? We need to split the negative 20 into two numbers. One is positive and one is negative. Okay, and what does that look like? Well, it looks like this. We could either be 1 times negative 20 or negative 1 times positive 20. Now, some of you will say, "Can I just list 1 and 20 once and then know that I have to subtract them?" Whatever. Yes, you can do that if you understand what I meant. Otherwise, just stick with this. Okay. Can we do 2 times anything? Yeah, we can do 2 times negative 10 or negative 2 times positive 10. And then moving on. Oh, and by the way, I told you you can stop as soon as you find the set. And it's good to check what you've got so far. So let's just do that because you'll see that here, 1 plus negative 20 is negative 19. That's not the sign we want, but it is the number we want. So then the other one with the same numbers and different sign, that's going to be it. These two combine to be positive 19. And then we don't have to go any further. We don't have to list all of the factors of negative 20, which is great. Okay, so then what does that look like for us doing our work? Well, we're going to, again, as always, we're going to list our first term the same. That's already there, 5z squared. And then this 19z is going to split up into negative 1z, negative z, and positive 20z. Okay, they combine to the 19z that we see, that we're given. But now that it's split up into 2, it makes it easier to factor. And then, of course, the last term stays the same. The only thing we did there is we split up 19z into negative z and positive 20z. Yep. Now, what do we do next? We group them. We say group this together, group this together, and see what we can factor out of each one. So the first one, we can factor out a z. That's all we can bring out. There's no coefficient we can bring out. So we bring out a z. And then what do we have left when we divide them both by z? We've got 5z minus 1. Now, what can we factor out of 20z minus 4? Well, they're both divisible by 4. And that's all we can bring out because there's no z on the second term. So always have to put a sign, positive 4. And then what do we get when we factor out the 4? 20z divided by 4 is 5z. And negative 4 divided by 4 is negative 1. Looks good because we got 5z minus 1 inside both parentheses. So we then have as our pair of parentheses z plus 4 times 5z minus 1. That is the answer. See, we're moving faster now. Okay. Here, we're going to multiply the a and the c values, and we get negative 30. And that means that we're going to factor negative 30. Remember, we're looking for them, the two numbers that we get. One's positive and one's negative. When we combine them, we should get a positive 7 because that's the middle term. So we say either 1 times negative 30 or negative 1 times positive 30. Neither of them combine to 7. 2 times negative 15 or negative 2 times positive 15. Still too far away. They combine to either negative 13 or 13. Let's keep going. 3 times anything? Yeah, 3 times 10. Or 3 times negative 10, rather. 3 times negative 10 or negative 3 times positive 10. And what do you know? Negative 3 times positive 10, those two add together to be the 7 that we want. So we keep the first term the same, 6t squared. That 7t gets split up into negative 3t and positive 10t. And then that negative 5 as our final term stays there. Okay, then we're going to group them. Group that and that, that and that. And then what can we factor out of 6t squared minus 3t? We can get a 3 out, and we can get a t out. And then what's left? 6t squared divided by 3t is 2t, and negative 3t divided by 3t is negative 1. Okay, what can we factor out of the next one? Well, 10t minus 5, they both have a 5 in there. We're not going to factor out a negative 5 because the first term isn't negative. Whenever the first term, this here, is negative, we'll bring a negative number out, but it's not, so we don't. Okay, we just bring the 5 out, and it's got to be plus 5. Keep them separated with a sign. Okay, divide them both by 5. What do we get on the inside? 10t divided by 5, 2t. Negative 5 divided by 5, negative 1. And you can see, great, we've got inside 2t minus 1 and 2t minus 1. That's what we're looking for. So we get as our first term 3t plus 5 and 2t minus 1. And I'm telling you now, you should be foiling them back together to be sure that you're getting back to the original trinomial that they gave you. Okay? But that's your answer. And by the way, I think I again forgot to check that all of these numbers that you're given at the top here, the A, B, and C terms, there's nothing common that you can divide out. I'm going to try and remember to do that for the rest of them because that's important. And if you miss that, I know that these early ones don't do that, but if you miss that, then it's going to be funky because it's not really going to factor well. You're going to be confused, and trust me, you want to always check that first. It's to your benefit. Things are easier for you. Okay, let's do the last one on this set of 3. Number 18 here. Okay, so let's first do what I just said we should be doing, which is to check that 4, negative 5, and negative 6 have nothing they can divide out, and they don't. There's no common factor. 4 is just 2 and 2. 5 is prime, so if you can't divide it by 2, it already doesn't work. And 6 is 2 and 3 you can divide by. So no common terms. So we multiply the A term times the C term, and we get negative 24. Okay, let's write it down. Negative 24. And we're going to list the factors. 1 times negative 24. Let's be sure what we're looking for. We're looking for them to add together to be negative 5. So let's just write them. Keep going. It's either 1 times negative 24 or negative 1 times positive 24, or 2 times anything, 2 times negative 12, or negative 2 times positive 12, which, by the way, don't combine to be negative 5. So what about 3? 3 times negative 8. That's one that everybody misses, the 3 times 8 for 24. Don't be one of those people. Know that 3 times 8 is 24, and you can always do 3. Okay? Or negative 3 times positive 8. And we're looking for negative 5, and what do you know? Those two combine to negative 5. So we've got our pair. We go over here, and we write the 4w squared. And instead of negative 5w, we put positive 3w and negative 8w. And then our last term, negative 6, we write the same. Now we're going to group them. And what can we factor out of 4w squared plus 3w? Well, 4 and 3 don't have a common factor except for 1, so we're just going to pull a w out of here. And then we say, what's left? 4w squared divided by w is 4w, and 3w divided by w is 3. Okay. Now, what do we factor out of this one? Well, since the leading term is negative, that's negative 8w, we're going to pull out a negative. So we say negative, and then we can divide both those negative 8 and negative 6. Those have a common factor of 2. we pull out a -2. And when we divide -8w by -2, we get 4w. When we divide -6 by -2, we get +3. And again, as always, good sign, we got the same thing in both of these sets of parentheses. So how do we write it as a final answer? We write w minus 2, the two terms that we factored out, times what we found inside for both of them that stayed inside, 4w plus 3. As always, multiply them together to check your answer and make sure that you get back to the original trinomial that they gave you at the top. But let's box it. That is a solid answer. Okay, we're done with these. Let's move on to number 20.